So, what are some of the biggest challenges that companies are facing when they're pushing out this kind of, well, quite dramatic culture shift?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so initially, cost was a huge inhibitor for companies. And so as the costs have either become less important because the tools have become more cost competitive, or
Yeah.
the strategic lens through which they're viewing the acquisition of these tools has made that cost appear an essential cost. Then really the challenge is selecting the right tool, ensuring that there's proper security, and then the change management and ensuring that training happens with these tools. So in many cases, we've done surveys of knowledge workers, and we have found that many of them are hungry and calling out for more training, more support, more process standardization, and the critical part is automation. So much of the digital transformation landscape is to automate really anything that can be automated. And in many cases, it's not automating people out of the process. It's supporting people to allow them to do more at scale, to improve the customer experience and improve the employees' quality of life. So again, back to the capitulation, when you see that employees are asking for these things and they're asking for the optionality to work from home, they're really asking to be more efficient. So it's a fascinating confluence of times to really drive digital transformation at an accelerated rate.
It would seem to me that it's not just about the technology here and in order to enable people. It's as much about the culture of the organization, how flexible and agile they are, and how they actually support the rollout and that transition to being fully remote knowledge workers supported by the digital transformation efforts.
Absolutely. It's really making the technology ever more human, and it's in support of the employees, really our organizational passions at Nitro, to make the technology decidedly more human, easy to use, easy to implement and maintain. And the greater extent that then these tools can be distributed, that will increase productivity in a step function manner, as opposed to delivering the tools that are needed to a select few. And so, really, for us, it's the democratization of technology that's been a part of our messaging. But in a lot of the data that we're looking at here, I think it supports that thesis.
So let's wrap this up a little bit here. Act now, stay ahead. Um, we're seeing, for instance, flexibility in digital solutions kind of makes sense. These are both terms that we've been using, throughout this conversation here. But e-signature tools, for instance, are seeing a massive rise in popularity. You're seeing that through your own internal statistics and gathering. We're seeing more and more things come in to us as individuals, even from as private citizens. So, are the is half of this about us getting more comfortable with it as human beings? And as you said earlier, about speeding up the legal department and taking away their reliance from wet ink signatures.
Well, I think it's both. I think it comes back to the companies listening to their employees. In many cases, their employees and their lines of business will tell them what they need. The more complex digital transformation efforts were sometimes prioritized, believing they would have more impact. And I think what we're seeing now is that there is a category of low-hanging fruit types of projects as it relates to digital transformation, like the tooling and basic change management. But there are a lot of processes from being able to manipulate documents to accelerating contracts that are oftentimes not incredibly difficult to implement, that provide incredible opportunities. And then certainly for more automation and integrations in some of these longer term projects, those are something that can also be prioritized and reviewed. But I think that that's what we're seeing is companies are taking more of an employee, teams, companies, and customers focus and letting that guide the prioritization of their digital transformation pursuits.
Absolutely, and that picks up a little bit on a point we made earlier. But do you think that the tools that are now being employed by certain companies, do you think that's going to be uh, an influencing factor on whether somebody actually decides to work for a company or not?
Well, I think it depends. Certainly, through that process, they would need to become aware of the tools. But I think companies do garner a reputation for how they engage with employees from a flexibility and a respect and an opportunity standpoint. These are some of the things that employees are definitely aware of and sort of emanate from brands. And I do agree with the statement that oftentimes their approach to those elements that I just mentioned are also tangibly evidenced through the way they tool at the organization. So very, very much. Yeah.
And this has probably changed pretty much in the last 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, and I think the rate of change is accelerating. So even when you brought up the slides relative to the shift of people's desires to either work from home, be in the office, or sort of in a hybrid mode, that's shifting continuously. So that's what's exciting about this conversation, exciting about this space. The story is not written; we're all writing it now. So it is a fertile ground for philosophical conversation and tactical execution. So exciting time.
It is this perfect storm of technology and psychology and changing working culture and physical environments all coming together, and not just sort of pushing up against each other, but really trying to work out the best way to interact, but at incredible speeds as well.
Yeah, it's really a collision of all of those forces, as you mentioned. And I think that we're all learning from each other. So it's, again, it's an exciting time. It's a time of evolution. And it's changing, the skill sets of the underlying population. So I would just say, even as I look at this slide and the contents on it, it's as much a digital transformation of technologies as it is people. So